Now let's take a look at investigation 3, which talks about markups, markdowns, and different measures using ratios, percents, and proportions. You've done ratio tables, percent tables in the past. This is kind of an extension off of everything that you've done there. Very, very similar though. So let's look at the problem. It says Latasha bought a concert ticket. She does not remember the price of the ticket, but she remembers she had to pay $1 in tax. Sales tax where Latasha lives is 8%. She drew a percent bar to find the original price. So you notice she does not know the original price. That's a big old question mark. But she knows that 8%, when she paid 8% of that original price, which is 100% represents that original price, but when she paid 8% of it, that was only $1. Okay? So we're going to look at, and what they're doing here is if you can find 1%, like we've been talking about unit rates, like 1% of something is kind of like the unit rate, whereas if you know 1%, then you can easily find 10%, 20%, 30%, or 100%. Okay, so that's kind of what we're going for. So looking at questions down here, how does she know that 1% is 0.125? These are questions that we're looking to hopefully be able to answer by the end of class today or this lesson. So how does knowing that 1% help? We've already talked about that. That's the unit rate, right? So you finding the unit rate is going to help. How does knowing 1% ticket price is help her find the total price? Right, so you're looking at the original price and then you're looking at the total price, which are two different things in this context. And you have a lab sheet with this fraction bar on there, this percent bar on there. You're welcome to use that. So that was a percent bar. It can help you keep track of things and help you organize and give you a visual representation of percentages of something so you can break it down more easily. You can do the same thing using a percent table like what we have here. So this is a percent table. So you also have a lab sheet with this in there. You don't have to rewrite it or copy it in your notes. But I do want you to write this out and try to figure out what those values would be in here. Okay, so we're going to try to figure out what those values are in there. Let's go ahead and do that right now, just so you get an idea. We know that 8% of X, right? So this would be X. Let's say that is X. Okay, 8% of X, we know that is $1. So the total price, that 108% is 100% plus that 8%, which is X plus the $1. So however much this is plus the 8%, so that would be X dollars plus $1. So we know this is true. We want to figure out what that value is for the original price before that tax was added on, right? So we're going to change 8% into a decimal, which is 0.08. And when you see the word of, that means multiplication. So 0.08 times X is equal to 1. So we need to figure out what number times X gives us 1. And we can just ask the opposite question and divide 1 by 0.08, and that will give us X. And when we do that, you would get 12.5. That tells us that the original price for that ticket was $12.50. But since you are going to pay tax on top of that, you're going to add $1. So you paid $13.50 for that ticket. Now let's take a look. Let's jump into some more definitions here. Let's make sure that we have these down. So salespeople who sell things, if you work at a job where there's a commission, what that means is your pay is directly based off of what or how much product you sell, depending on what it is. A lot of our examples here are going to be on selling cars, right? Because everybody that's listening to this will likely one day purchase a car of their own. So that's what a commission is. Go ahead and take the time, write this definition in your notes. It's the percentage of the sale price of an item. It's basically what you are getting paid to sell that product. So if you sell a $200,000 car, your commission is going to be higher than if you sell a $2,000 car. So you're not going to be pushing people to spend $2,000 on a car. You're going to be pushing them to sell to purchase a $200,000 car. Go ahead and get that in your notes. And then when we're looking at a commission, so when somebody is selling something, they know that they're going to have to pay you for it, there's usually a markup, right? Because that markup, they still want to make their money. Even though they're not selling it, they have to pay you. So what they do is they push that cost off onto the customer, the person who's buying it. Okay. So then there's markup, and there's the buying price. So make sure you get markup in there. So if you own a dealership and let's say you buy a car for $25,000, well, you have a lot of math to do to figure out all the costs of even selling this, right? And then you have to figure out, if I want to sell it and make money, I have to add more on top of that. Okay, so usually there's a huge percentage of markup for dealers before they make money. That's what the markup is. So the buying price, that is what the dealer buys the vehicle for. All right, so put that in your notes. The buying price is what the dealer, the original dealer, buys the car for. So that would be the 25. I buy this Mustang for $25,000, and then after all the markups, I'm going to sell it for $45,000. So the selling price is what the consumer, that would be you, buy the car for. Make sure you get all these definitions in your notes in a way that makes sense. Now let's take a look at jumping into the problem sets. Huan sells cars at Carla's Used Cars. Recently, he received a job offer from Autos. So you have you have Carla's Used Cars and Autos Used Cars. So it's a little different. Autos use autos and Carla's Used Cars. Get it? Funny. So in this problem, you're going to decide whether this person, Huan, should work for Carla or Auto. Okay, so there is our problem. Now we're going to answer some questions to figure out what job should we take. Part A says, at Carla's Used Cars, Huan earns a commission that is 25% of the markup on the car. It's not 25%. So if you sell it for $25,000, you don't get 25% of the $25,000, right? You get 25% of whatever that markup was. So I said the $25,000, the dealer, right? Let's say Carla buys a car for $25,000 and sells it for $45,000. Your pay would be 25% of that difference. So you get 25% of that $20,000 difference. So go ahead and try number 1, 2, and 3 on your own. I think that, yeah, so numbers 1, 2, and 3 on your own. Get as far as you can. If you need to come back every once in a while, if you're lost, you can. But I do want to encourage you to try these on your own before you come back and look at the solutions. So let's take a look at the first one. For each car, what is Huan's commissions in dollars? Explain how you found the commissions. All right, so let's look at this first one. So let's look at this one. So this one right here, we're looking at that one. So if the markup is 300, he's making 25% of that. So it would be 25% of 300. And then on the second one, if the markup is 950, notice how that's a nicer car, right? The markup is 950. He's making 25% of 950. And on the last one, he would be making 25% of 500. Now we have to find those percentages. And in order to find percentages, remember, you would just take the decimal times that number. So if we take the decimal, which is 0.25, times 300, you should get, he makes $75 commission on that sale. So on the first one, he makes $75. On this second one, you would take 0.25 times 950, and you get $237.50. So he would make $237.50. And on the last one, you would take 0.25 times 500, and he would make $125 on that one. Okay, so that's part one. If you have done part two, pause the video, try part two now that you have part one. Okay, then for two, it says at Carla's, the markup on a car is 10% of the buying price. So these are the markups. Let me highlight the markups. So you have 300, 950, and 500. Okay, so those are the markups, and she gets that number from taking 10% of the buying price and putting that on there. Okay, so for each car, what was Carla's buying price? And I'm going to erase these above there. So hopefully you had, if not, rewind a little bit and get those in there. So let's go ahead and do that. So on the first one, if we know that the markup is $300, then we want to know, okay, well, what percent is that? Then we know that that's 10% of a number. So we want to know 10% of what number. So I will say X is 300, right? Because 300 represents 10% of some number, but we don't know what it is, okay? So over here, this is also a 10% markup. So again, 10% of 950 now, sorry, of what number equals 950. So that 950 represents 10% of some number. We don't know what it is, but we're trying to figure it out. And then lastly, 10% of what number is 500. Okay, so let's go ahead and work these out, just like before. Whereas you would have a decimal, change this to a decimal, so that's 0.1 times X is equal to 300. And when we have a decimal like this, remember, you have to ask the opposite question. So instead of 0.1 times what number gives me 300, 300 divided by 0.1 will give me what number. So now I can put this into a calculator, and that'll give me what my X value is, which dividing by 0.1 is like timesing by 10. So this should be 3,000. Okay, so that was the original buying price, was 3,000, and she's selling it for 3,300. Okay, and then just to give you an idea, remember you make $75, okay, and then she would make $225 if she sold that. But there's lots of other costs in there too. She's got lots of other people to pay. So really, that's not a good margin. Let's look at the next one. So 0.1 of X is equal to 950. So 950 divided by 0.1 is what number? When you plug that in, that is 9,500. Okay, so she bought this car for 9,500 and she's selling it to you for $950 more than that. And then lastly, 0.1 of X is equal to 500. But you're going to end up dividing by 0.1 to figure out what number that is right there. So you end up with $5,000. Make sure you're labeling it $5,000. And then part B, it says for each car, what was the selling price? So I'll do that in a different color. The selling price is what she sold it to you for. So this you would add that 300 onto this, and so the selling price would be 3,300. That's the ticket price. That's the price on the window. And then you would add 950 here. So in this case, this is going to be 10,450. 10,450. Again, that's what you are purchasing it for. And then lastly, you would add 500, so that's 5,500. Okay, that's the selling price. So this represents the buying price, and this represents the selling price. All right, so that answers 1 and 2. Let's go ahead and take a look at number 3, where it says Carla buys a minivan for $20,500. She writes a proportion to find the selling price. Is Carla's method correct? So go ahead and try this out to see if you get the same thing that we had gotten before. Well, that's not one that we had before. But she buys a minivan for $20,500, right? And she wants to sell it for that 10% more. And so is this going to give her what she needs? Go ahead and try this on your own and then come back to the video. All right, so if you look at this proportion, this is actually accurate. And so let's split this up a little bit. So if you look at this side, the right side, this is her buying price, right? Which is represented by the 100%. This represents 100%. Okay? Now, her selling price, she wants to increase it by 10%. So this represents that plus 10%, which is 110%. Okay? And this is the selling price. So if you solve this proportion, you will get what your new selling price would have to be. So let's go ahead and do that. When we cross multiply, you remember how to cross multiply? Do something like that. And you end up with 100s is equal to 20,500 times 110. But again, don't multiply those together, because what we're going to have to do is, in order to figure out what times 100 will give me this, you are going to divide out that 100 like what we've been doing. Because over here that cancels. And then so divide this by 100, and you notice there are 2 zeros here. You can cancel out. So really all you're doing is taking 205 times 110, which gives us a selling price of $22,500. So that's what she's going to put on the sticker price for the car so that she makes enough money to continue running her business. And then on part B, it says use the same 4 numbers as the proportion above. Write the proportion in a different way. So we've talked about this already, right? We can write the proportion in a different way as long as, and I'll highlight this here, our cross products, which is this first line right here, are the same. Okay, so another way that you could write this is just kind of switch them around a little bit. You could have 100 over 20,500 is equal to 110 over S. Okay, there's a couple different ways you could do, but again, as long as you have S and 100 across from each other and 110 and 20,500 across from each other, it'll work. On C, it says Huan checks the selling price Carla found. He uses M to represent the markup. Okay, is his method correct? If you haven't tried this, pause the video and please try it on your own before you listen to the answer. Well, one thing that we could do, we know what the markup is. Right up here, we found what that markup is. You can just subtract those away and see that your markup is going to be about $2,000. So let's look at this. We could cross multiply. So you'd have 20,500 times 10 is equal to 100 times M. And we want to know what number times 100 will give us this, so I divide out that 100. You do the opposites to get the answer to that question. And again, I can divide out zeros. So I take a 0 there, a 0 there, a 0 there, a 0 there, and I have 2,050. And that's our markup. And that's what, if you go up here and subtract those, if you subtract this number and that number, that's what you end up getting. Except looking at this and looking at my calculator, this should be 22,550. If you multiply these correctly, I just wrote the numbers down wrong. So that the difference is equal to that markup of 2,050. So that works. Okay, and it works because he's looking for a different, the markup is 10% of that 100, which is why he can use 10%, and that gives you the markup, not the original price. And then the last one here, it says a customer wants to buy the minivan. Her budget is $23,000. The selling price plus 5% sales tax goes over that budget. So what's the maximum selling price that the customer can afford, and explain. So again, if you haven't tried this one, try it on your own before you watch the solution here. Okay, so let's try to set up a proportion. You know the 23,000. Okay, that's her budget, and that has to include that 5% sales tax. Okay, so we'll put that over 105. That has to be equal to whatever the selling price is, okay, the price that she can afford, and over 100, because you want to know 100% of what that is going to be, right? So that it's equal to that 25,000 or proportional to. Okay, because she doesn't want to go over 23,000. So here we can go ahead and cross multiply. So you would have 23,000 times 100 is equal to 105 times S. So to figure out what S is, you ask the opposite question, and you would divide this side by 105. And you would actually do it to both sides, so it gets rid of that 105. 105 over 105 is 1. So you would have S is equal to, and then when you multiply that out, this you'll have to use a calculator. It doesn't, since that's a 105, it doesn't come out as easily, but you would end up getting $21,904.76. What that means is if she can only afford $23,000 as a car, then she has to look for a car that's $21,904.76. Oops, that's a period. Or less, okay, because she still has to pay that 5% sales tax. So now let's take a look at autos. So here at autos, it says that the markup is 15% of the buying price, and the commission is 20% of that markup. Okay, so Juan wonders whether he will get higher commissions at Carlos or autos, and that's what we're trying to figure out. So auto also bought a minivan for $20,500, just like in 3A with Carla. At which dealership would Juan make a higher commission? So go ahead and try numbers 1 and 2 here on part B, and then come back to the video to see how you did. So let's take a look at this. Number 1, auto, he buys it for $20,000. So let's figure out a few things. Number 1, let's just review Carla's markup and commission. Let's go ahead and review that. So for Carla, we'll do this in red. She buys it for $20,500, and that's 100%. And now she wants to mark up. So we're going to do like what they did up here. We want to figure out the markup, right? And her markup is 10%. So the markup is, when you solve this, you would cross multiply. So take that times that divided by 100, and we ended up getting 20,050. So that 2,050, sorry, that's how much she's going to mark up her car. So his commission, remember, is going to be 25% of that. So 0.25 times 2,050. That will give him a commission, and I'll write it underneath here, of $512.50. Not bad for a day's work, right? Now, let's go ahead and choose a different color. So let's do this one in purple, and this one will be for auto. So auto also is purchasing a $20,000 500 minivan, and that's 100% of the cost that he paid for it. Now we want to know his markup. His markup, it says, is 15%. Okay, so we would cross multiply and you would figure out that the markup in this case is going to be $3,075. That's the markup. Okay, that's how much more he's going to charge for that van. So you can get it cheaper from Carla. Not too much cheaper. Now, let's figure out what his commission is. His commission, it says that he pays 20%. So we're going to find 20% of the $3,075. And when we find that, you end up getting $615. So now, if you think about it, with Carla, he would make that much, and with Otto, he would make that much. Roughly $100 more with Otto, even though the numbers, since he's getting 25% from her, from Carla's, it seems like he'd be making more. He doesn't, right? It's because his markup, original markup, is bigger, so his chunk is a little bit bigger, even though the percentage is less. Then on part C, Juan takes the job at Otto's. Otto has a luxury sedan. Oh, sorry. So, write two statements comparing Juan's commission in the minivan if he works for Carla to his commission if he works. So we have them here. Those are the two commissions for those. So he's going to make more for Otto than he would for Carla. Again, even though those numbers don't show that, it's because the markup off of that bigger number, which is what he bought it for, is bigger. It makes a bigger change. So make sure you answer number 2 there as well. And then C, Juan takes a job at Otto's because he's going to pay more. Otto has a luxury sedan selling price of $20,700. What was the buying price? So what did Otto pay for it? And then he offers a discount on his cars. He said, and go ahead and answer that one. You can read through it yourself. I won't insult your intelligence. But go ahead and on C, answer 1 and 2, and then come back to the video to see how you did. So if we look at the buying price, so let's try setting up a proportion. Since we've been doing proportions, let's continue to do that. So this is on the first one. We know that he is selling it for $20,700. And we know that he marks it up by 15%. So this is actually 115% of his buying price because he marked it up 15%. So we want to know, what did he buy it for? So we want to know how much money, right? We're going to use, instead of a money sign, I guess, let's use a T for total. T would represent, actually, let's do B for buying, because that's what he bought it for. So B is equal to the buying price. So that's what the dealer, what Otto bought it for, is equal to B over 100. Now let's go ahead and cross multiply. So you cross multiply there and there. You get 20,700 times 100 is equal to 115 times B. So divide out that 115. And those will cancel. You get B is equal to, plug that into a calculator, and that would be 18,000. So he bought that car for 18,000. He marked it up by 15%, which was the 20,700, and that's what he's going to sell it for. Now let's look at the second one. It says Otto offers a discount on his cars, 15% off all cars this week only. Juan says that if Otto takes 15% off the 20,700, that's for that luxury sedan, the discounted selling price will be the same as the buying price. There will be no markup. So Juan will not get a commission. Do you agree, disagree, or so forth? Because remember, that markup is going to be what he gets his, where he gets his money. So if you haven't tried this one, go ahead and try this one on your own. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is figure out if it's 15% off. Let's figure that out. Right? So we want to know, what is 15% of 20,700? And when you do that, you would multiply those and you would get 3,105. Okay? So that is the amount taken off. Now let's figure out what is he going to sell it for. Well, then you would take that off of the 20,700 and you would get 17,595. 17,595. Now remember, he bought this car for 18,000. So if he does this, he's losing money. And so yeah, Juan's not going to make any money. He's buying the buyer is actually buying it less than what the sellers bought it for originally. So Juan, in this case, will not make any money. Okay, so that is it for 3.1, commissions, markups, and discount proportions with percents.